Up to this point, we've followed pretty similar sets of rules for naming Category 1 compounds and Category 2 compounds. Both of these categories include metal elements at the beginning of their names and formulas, which means we have to make sure their charges equal out. Sometimes dealing with charges seems a little complicated, but if we got rid of the metals altogether, we wouldn't have to deal with those charges anymore. This is how Category 3 works. Category 3 compounds are made of all nonmetals, so that's 2 red elements. Since the metals are the complicated elements on the periodic table, things get a lot simpler when they aren't there, when there are only nonmetals. In fact, Category 3 compounds don't use charges at all. To make things simpler, they use prefixes instead. Here's a list of the prefixes chemists use to name Category 3 compounds. Most of them are familiar, but a few of them might not be the most common number prefixes you've used before. Especially watch out for tetra, that means 4. Most of us think of the prefixes quatra or quad, but IUPAC has always used tetra for 4 instead. Here's how this works. Like we've been doing with other categories, we start by writing the names of the 2 elements. Since there's no metal here, you always just write them in the order they've been given. Then you change the ending to "-ide" to signal that it's bonded in a compound. And last, you look at those subscripts, and we're going to turn them into proper prefixes to tell how many atoms of each are bonded together. Here are 2 examples. Let's start with P5F2. Step 1. We write phosphorus for P and fluorine for F. Step 2. Fluorine becomes fluoride. And step 3, this is the new step, we go to look at the subscripts in the formula that we were given. P5 means there are 5 phosphorus atoms, and F2 means there are 2 fluorine atoms. So we go to our list of prefixes and we find penta for 5 and di for 2. We're going to add these prefixes to the beginning of each element's name. So P5 means pentaphosphorus, and F2 means difluoride. So the final chemical name for P5F2 is pentaphosphorus difluoride. Alright, here's one more example. There's only one trick involved in naming Category 3 compounds, and I'll show it to you here with this example, SF6. Step 1 gives us sulfur and, again, fluorine. Step 2 gives us fluoride. And step 3 tells us to go back and use our prefixes. But this is where that one little trick comes into play. S doesn't have a subscript, which means it has an understood 1. There's 1 sulfur atom in this compound. According to our list of prefixes, sulfur should get the prefix mono in front. Except the prefix mono is not used in the first element. The second element always has to have a prefix, even if it's mono. But the first element never uses the prefix mono. So we just leave it off of sulfur. Now, there are still 6 fluorine atoms in this compound, so we need a prefix for that. The prefix list gives us hexa for 6, so fluoride becomes hexafluoride. The final chemical name here is sulfur hexafluoride. Remember, the only exception here is that mono is never used as a prefix on the first element. So sulfur just keeps its usual name, and fluorine is the only element with a prefix this time. So there's 2 examples of naming Category 3 compounds. These should seem pretty simple, but make sure you're clear on the one exception. No mono for the first element. One word of warning. The prefix system is so easy to learn that you'll be tempted to use prefixes with every element in every compound, especially with nonmetals. The only category that uses prefixes is Category 3, with 2 red elements, 2 nonmetals. Remember, if there's a metal element anywhere in the compound, you cannot use prefixes. You cannot use prefixes at all with any other category other than Category 3. And since you're trying not to use prefixes where you shouldn't, sometimes you'll get carried away with charges, and you'll try to use charges with Category 3 compounds. Don't do that. Category 3 is all about prefixes. You never use charges with Category 3 compounds. The big idea, charges are for Categories 1 and 2, prefixes are for Category 3. Don't mix it up. Try these examples and remember the warnings I gave you. Here are your answers. If you're unsure of any of these, check your prefix list or go back and re-watch parts of this video.